In Brazil, it feels like that, where a guy always wakes up on the same day, Groundhog Day. Groundhog Day. This movie was really good. It was a movie with Groundhog Day, something like that. And the guy always woke up, then he'd kill himself, wake up on the same day. It was a mess. The guy always returned to the same day. There was nothing to do. And it seems like Brazil is permanently in that situation. Here we are, if you look closely, okay? Since the middle to the end of 2020, discussing the alleged involvement of Bolsonaro supporters in a coup attempt and the Supreme Court's responses to it. The difference lies in what happened throughout the process, but they all stem from a decision made by the core group of Bolsonaro supporters, which was inherently a coup decision, there's no denying it, and on the other side, a developed thesis. Through the Supreme Federal Court, by the ruling political elite of Brazil, which is to grant Alexandre de Moraes full powers for him to have an inquiry, and based on this inquiry, he can go after the coup-like attacks instigated by Bolsonaro, yes, but also from the imposition of the political system of the Brazilian ruling elite as a force beyond the law. This matter should have ended a long time ago, but the parties involved think it's a dispute where everyone's life has to be affected. So sometimes you talk to Bolsonaro and he says, but aren't you going to take a stand? I say, but why should I take a stand? It's got nothing to do with me. As far as I'm concerned, Bolsonaro should have fallen in the year 2020. In my opinion, Bolsonaro wouldn't be president anymore. Bolsonaro is a criminal, and I have nothing to do with this discussion. And Alexandre de Moraes, look, if you hadn't altered the composition, including the nominations made, despite everything, there's no despite. Bolsonaro made the appointments. And these appointments strengthened the composition, let's say the establishment of the Supreme Federal Court. And it's natural that he wouldn't be in a position to complain. Because where he had power struggles, which would be in Congress, the Senate, and the Supreme Federal Court itself, he weakened himself, so you're going to try to understand, because it's a schizophrenic fight, okay? Bolsonaro, he gave up the political fight against the Supreme Federal Court, so he conceded to the Supreme Court, he conceded to the Attorney General's office, he conceded in the Senate when the famous lava toga happened. He had Flavio start withdrawing signatures. They were there seeking peace. So institutionally, Bolsonaro was trying to make peace with Zandel. You remember that? Everyone remembers. Now, what was he doing behind the scenes? He was mobilizing through the armed forces, so it was a game, very awkwardly. So you lost institutionally. So let's go to the National Congress. Fearing impeachment, he basically surrendered with the secret budget, handed over the government to the Central. Let's remember that at the end of 2020 to 2021, that was when the Central took over his government. Silvio Nogueira becomes a minister. The whole PP group and such. The guys take over the government, start handling the political articulation of the government, turn Silvio Brazil into a vote-buying scheme in the Northeast, which is what he intended to do there. And they used this and later supported Lula, as we mentioned, by the way. Type 1 if anyone remembers in the live. Do you remember we used to say this, that they would use Silvio Brazil, the Centro guys, to later side with Lula and snub Bolsonaro? Which is what happened in those cities where the Centro dominates in the countryside. Then Bolsonaro, well, he yielded. He had already yielded before on the Moro issue, on the Lava Jato issue, but he also started to yield in building any economic project that was at least slightly against the Centro, such as the administrative reform that reduced the number of municipalities by Paulo Guedes, for example, that was never even considered. Tax reform, Guedes didn't have a solid proposal, that wasn't considered either. At the end of the day, he was planning with a palace group composed of Braga Neto, Heleno, and Felipe G. Martins, the revenge. His revenge is the most obvious kind of revenge from someone who cannot govern and is basically trying to consolidate power. Yes, I will seek popular legitimacy on one side, protests. Remember September 7th, 2022? Remember, Brazil turned 200 years old and people shouted that this land was unyielding. It wasn't the conservatives who like Brazil's history, the Brazil's Paralelos crowd, right? Everyone. Oh, Bonifacio, oh, Dom Pedro I, they were here talking about Bolsonaro's penis. They were there idolizing the phallus, the limp one, a random nobody there. They were inciting a popular uprising, staged a coup attempt, a coup-like demonstration in 2021. This needs to be said. 2022, right? September 7th, there was that business with the ambassadors, the whole thing with the voting machines. They built conspiracy theories around the voting machines, set up operational groups, and after losing the elections, they started, and this is the point, they launched a series of operations, mobilizing people, with people going to the front of barracks with demonstrations. With people talking about urns, folks. All of that happened, you will remember, all of that happened when Constantino talked about cat, track, platypus. He wasn't talking of a complex fauna involving several continents. When Figueiredo ordered people to go in front of General Freire Gomes's house, at the time when Freire Gomes was receiving the draft of the coup from Bolsonaro, with an invitation to participate in the coup, it wasn't because Figueiredo thought, Freire Gomes is friendly, he'll have a picnic for you. It wasn't, no way. These things were coordinated, but they couldn't pull it off. The problem is that the story is becoming even more ridiculous. So, I'm watching the defense that Bolsonaro supporters are making on social media, okay? We need to understand. They are trying to treat it as ridiculous. What kind of coup is this? Who is Kid Espresso? No, who is Kid Espresso? They are from the Special Forces. I mean, the guy is from the Special Forces. He gets paid as Special Forces. And the name Kids is used for various groups there, including there were kids in the Haiti operation, and they are not special. They are mocked. Because that's what the Bolsonaro supporters are understanding now. No, those guys, they're a bit crazy. A bit crazy? They're our crazies, right? Every Brazilian is a bit crazy. We can agree on that. We're kind of playful, but everything seems to indicate that this stuff happened. I can't confirm it. It would be irresponsible to make any accusations, but there's no use in pretending. There's no use in pretending that none of this happened.